AI can do so much more. But instead, we're getting people making out with AI robots.
When you told me that you were going to go to London and you're going to take your master's in AI ethics, I was excited for you, to be honest. But at the same time, I was asking myself, why AI ethics?
Most of the products that was being designed, all of it is for efficiency. How do I get rid of 50% of my workforce? How do I 10x my profit with the same number of headcount? And I feel like AI can do so much more. Talking about revolutionizing healthcare industries, new drug treatments and trials. How do we implement universal basic healthcare? There's gonna be no differentiator anymore, right? Like you go on LinkedIn, everyone speaks the same thing. You see the same post. Other than who we are, what we value, what's the humanistic side of your platform that you're building.
In the next 5 years, there would be a division between fast food AI and gourmet AI. The mass market wouldn't really mind what they're doing with data. But at the same time, there would be fine dining AI. That would be,
Organic
yeah,
vendors.
organic, fine dining, grain free, dairy free, everything free, non
Non-GMO.
GMO AI.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Lumpia Bites. One of our goals here in this podcast is to spotlight Filipino tech professionals, not just in the Philippines, but also around the world, and learn from their stories and experiences. And today, we're excited that we're heading to London to explore a career journey from early beginnings to navigating challenges and understanding how the future of work is shifting with AI. Mooch, please do the honors in introducing our special guest today.
I am so excited for our special guest today. I met her in DLSU Sprint, which is LaSalle's Computer Science Honor Society. She is kind, she is funny, but on top of all of that, she is extremely brilliant and smart, packaged in humility. She's an experienced tech professional who has worked across product, AI transformation, and technical roles. She has made the decision to move to London to even deepen her craft and recently completed her master's in AI ethics, a field that sits in the intersection of people, technology, and responsibility. And I'm excited to have our guest today, which is Carol C.
Hello. Hi, Carol. Welcome.
Welcome, welcome. So,
Hello.
so Carol, I've known you since college. We haven't been in touch for a long time until that fateful day where we connected and reconnected with our shared nerdness and interest in artificial intelligence. So for all of our listeners out there, would you care to share like an overview of your career? Where has your career in tech? Where did you start? Where has it led you?
Yeah, so I guess going back, as you've mentioned, we met in DLSU. So I took up computer science. I've already been in the technical space ever since, right? I started out as a software engineering consultant for like a decade, working a lot with like entrepreneurs, how they do marketing, management, business operations, all that, and trying to automate the field that they're in. From there, I became more interested in like the data driven data transformation. So like how do you understand user experience and building software for people, right? Not just for companies to succeed in their goals, but for people to actually be enjoying your platforms. That's how I think I got into product management, which is obviously mostly about customer experience, getting from point A to point D when it comes to products and making sure that it's an enjoyable experience for your users.
Wow, awesome. And you were doing product before it was even a YouTube thing.
Yes, I think so. When I got into product management, I think everyone has a weird journey when it comes to that. So, me specifically, it was literally just a LinkedIn message of, do you know what product management is? Because we have an opening for product managers. And I'm like, okay, cool. Apparently, there's a name for data driven decision making. So, okay. So, I think a lot of people in that field did have varied ways to get into it. Now it's like everyone, you hear people of saying, I want to get into product management. But like 6 years ago, that was not even a dream.
You had kind of not the straight up career path that you didn't necessarily spend 10 years working in a corporation. There was no yellow brick road. There was no yellow brick road guiding you to this this role and your career path right now, but it's so exciting. How did you decide on the risk that you were taking in your career? How did you kind of 10x yourself from being able to jump from role to role to role, shifting? Because that's not like the n- normal trajectory of a traditional software engineer or computer scientist. And you've had the most creative and adventurous tech career, which is anyone would envy.
I guess we didn't really have that much of a risk, right? Like growing up, it wasn't really like it's either this or you're out in the streets. So I think that was a luxury that we mostly had. That's why I got the opportunity to like try my hand at entrepreneurship. In the beginning, speak with a lot of entrepreneurs, design agencies, or some of the people that I worked with along the way. It's not necessarily like I'm gonna go for this job and you're gonna get it on your next stage. A lot of it, it's not even something you plan for, but a lot of preparation in terms of where do you want to go. So like I think where I was getting at was I was already interested in AI. The opportunity was not there straight out of college, but it has always been at the back of my mind. I would watch all the AI videos or movies, right? Like all the space movies I would watch, all the whatever nerd. So you knew that it was your interest, even if it's not something you are in. It finds a way, right? Of like, then I got a job in an AI startup even if it was not the most frontier AI company, it still pivoted me to a transitioning role. I met great people there. A lot of them were very much into the responsible AI space. You meet people who are into the same fields as you, like, you know, how we communicated as well. Of like, oh, Moch, you're already researching about responsible in AI and how to communicate it to the mass people, that didn't really result to anything straight out, right? Like after we had that conversation, it wasn't like tomorrow we have a business plan. No, 1 year later, we're talking about it in a podcast. So like it's a ripple effect. And it's not that you have that straight plan, but it's about being prepared and knowing that whenever there's going to be a shift, you might be able to get into that board or jump into that ship. Yeah, if that makes sense. Like it's not direct, but it's a way towards a goal that you may or may not get.
It looks like Carol is always ahead of the curve. You know, you talk about product management. It's technologies. You always have to look 10 steps ahead of everything because of the innovation and all those things. One thing that I wanted to touch is, you know, we have a lot of viewers who's trying to get into tech or maybe trying to get into AI. And you've been into those different worlds, right? You've been into product management, AI transformation, but we know that tech in general, the industry, it can get very stressful, right? People who doesn't experience stress in tech, I mean, like, good for you. Right? But it's been known as a really fast-paced industry. I'm curious, looking back at your career, what were the toughest challenges or maybe toughest decisions that you've made?
I think one thing that's very important when it comes to the tech industry is it's not a gold, like it's not the gold standard, right? Everyone puts the tech industry up in a pedestal, but I think going back, this was not the opportunity that people thought it would be, right? None of the people above us, like our parents' generation, none of them knew what computer science would have entailed. I was even told that you just want to chat all day because you're always on the computer anyway. You just want to play games anyway. So it was not something that was aspired for back then. That's why I feel most of us in our generation are in this because we really like it. Us watching videos day in and day out during our free time, this is not normal anymore for people who came in because they thought it would reward them financially in the long run. And that seems to be the problem with the market now is there is really a lot of students who are not much invested in tech or in learning, doing that work, not even work, having that enjoyment of learning every day, and they're gonna struggle, right? Because 10 years down the road, they didn't really catch up. They wanted the 9 to 6 career path. And that's great, right? But at the same time, it's not, I never thought of it as work. Like I would just be on YouTube at 10 p.m. and, oh, a documentary. It's not computed as work hours, but it was just something that I actually enjoyed. So yeah, I think we were lucky. Well, I was lucky that got into a field that I actually do like. But I think the tough decision there was I actually think I risked it back then by not going for a, business degree or an economics or accounting degree. I think those were the safe bets when we were in college.
Were there cases where you feel burned out? Or it's just you enjoyed your work too much that you don't feel it? Because sometimes if we enjoy the work, right? Sometimes we're already stressed, but we don't feel it because we enjoy it. But have you been into situations where it was really so stressful?
I think yeah, I definitely did. When I was doing software engineering consultancy, I think did have those stressors when it comes to like business registration, having to deal with looking for clients. And I think it's because entrepreneurial way is you always have to deal with everything, even the things you don't really enjoy. And that's when I think I decided to go back to like a corporate job or a product management job was I think as you go along, you kind of decide or learn which parts of the job you actually enjoy and which parts you don't enjoy, right? So like going to product management, having a straight career for a few years, that was actually my pivot from the entrepreneur side of having to register a business, having to deal with accounting and taxes. Like those are just things I didn't like wasting time on. So, yes.
Carol, to be honest, when I mean, when you told me that you were going to go to London and you're gonna take your master's in AI ethics, I was excited for you, to be honest. But at the same time, I was asking myself, why AI ethics? Why AI ethics and why London? It's like I would have imagined somebody taking like somebody as aggressive, somebody as career ambitious with that thirst for knowledge as you. I would have imagined like taking a very technical master's role or maybe a master's in innovation, something with a fancy title. And I was like, why AI ethics? Why like something philosophical? What did you see? What crystal ball did you have 2 years ago? What did you see and how did you decide on this?
I guess to go back to your previous questions, what was the biggest risk I took? It was definitely this. And I'm still in the risk stage right now. Oh, yeah, it was really not I wouldn't call it a bubble, but it was really exploding when ChatGPT came out. I guess going back, I always wanted to get into linguistics. So that's also how I got into AI was I was doing a lot of natural language, but it was mostly like again if else statements and I would just script out everything and put it on the web systems, right? Like if this then say good morning, right? Like make it seem natural, but in reality it was all scripted. So that was the power that generative AI gave me was I didn't have to write those scripts anymore. It was like how would you respond to this message? But I think a lot of it was really rooted on how are we building products for people. And there was a lack of understanding of why do we even need these softwares other than we want efficiency, right? Most of the products that was being designed back in 2022 and 23 was for efficiency. Actually, until now, all of it is for efficiency. How do I get rid of 50% of my workforce? How do I 10x my profit with the same number of headcount? And I feel like AI can do so much more, right? Like AI, we're talking about revolutionizing healthcare industries, making way for new drug treatments and trials. How do we implement universal basic healthcare? Those kinds of things are actually a good way to live. But instead, we're getting people making out with AI robots. So it's like, cool, cool. So, so I think it was that understanding what do we really want out of this and what are we using it actually for was interesting. And at the same time, I was just interested in the philosophical side of it as well. So
Wow. In my personal humble opinion, I think it's the best compliment to your very, very technical skills, to your very, very technical career portfolio. And I was like, damn, that was genius. That was genius to take that because I think the future leaders need that AI ethics and responsibility. And if you don't have like a chief ethics person in the room, then it's a very scary room. And you're right, 200% that AI can do more. And I've actually been wondering, like most of the even business leaders and managers that I've been talking to are just really focused on how can we automate, automate, automate. But I'm like, why don't we start talking about how do we elevate? How do we elevate human work? How do we start, leveling up the type of outputs and creative ideas that we have with artificial intelligence? How do we use ethics to improve the bottom line and improve the quality of work that people are doing and not just automating, right?
It all boils down to being holistic with your approach, right? And I think moving forward, at least how I see it, everyone's using AI now as their main tool. And there's gonna be no differentiator anymore, right? Like you go on LinkedIn, everyone speaks the same thing. You see the same post. Before it was trolls that was posting the same stuff. Now it's probably people going. I mean, benefit of the doubt. It's probably not a troll farm. It's probably just people going on their chat GPT and saying, I want a post about this. And they come up with very similar articles. Like maybe it's not a troll farm, but maybe they actually are as well. But there's gonna be no differentiator, right? Other than who we are, what we value, what's the humanistic side of your platform that you're building. I think a lot of the AI automation that people are talking about is in the marketing side of like how do you build an end-to-end lead generation tool that will contact X number of people, personalized emails, but it's gonna be the same shit that they're gonna get on their inboxes, right? Like and AI agents would have an understanding of the CEO that he's interested in golf, let's say. So all 10 AI agents would craft a very nice email about, hey, I heard you like golf. And he's probably like, yeah, sure, I like golf. That's the only thing that's on the internet that's aware of. But if you come in as a leader that actually builds relationships with these CEOs still, then you're gonna be ahead, right? Like you're not just gonna know that this guy likes golf. You're gonna know what his favorite whiskey bottle is. So that will still put you at an advantage when all the other 10 agents are sending the same email to him and you're sending him a small tiny bottle of craft whiskey. You'll win the war, right?
How do we make AI ethics and responsibility sexy to the aggressive CEO that wants to just scale, scale, scale their startup?
So I guess my main one is really who you are as a person is who your startup has to be. I've seen a lot of businesses try to scale by following what their audience wants or what their competitors are doing, which is always, that's always a case study of competitor analysis and all that. But knowing who you are and what your boundaries and guardrails are as a person is what will define your guardrails for your AI services as well. And that is going to speak volume. Like, what are you okay with? What are you not okay with? That will be coded in, or well, probably not yet, but that's something you can codify to your tools. And that's going to be your edge case, right? Of who you are, your unique value proposition. Yeah.
Wow, nice. You said that this was one of the biggest risks that you've taken, and you're still in the risk part. Don't worry, I know it's gonna pay off. Because I've seen the reports on career paths when it comes to product and AI ethics, and they're the best combination right now. But just looking back, what were your assumptions when you went into this master's in London? What were your assumptions, and what were the right assumptions and what were the wrong assumptions and what were the challenges that you had to face moving, working, and studying abroad?
So I guess one of the real things that made me decide to go here and take up a non-technical course. Obviously, I did some research before coming here, right? And if I was gonna do a purely technical course, I might have just gone through a Coursera route, right? Like online, be at home, study the technical side, watch YouTube videos, all those things. But I feel that doing ethics or at least responsible AI requires you to be with humanity and with other people. So that definitely gave an edge of like coming into London. So majority of my classmates were a diverse set of Europeans, Americans. I was the only Asian, so I was representative of that. Um, but it was a wide range of different personalities, different, you know, ways to like how they grew up was a varied range. I would spend a lot of my free weeks going outside of London, like going to York, Oxford, Edinburgh, all those different towns where you meet real people, right? People who are not in the AI space, people who are just one of the guys I met that I feel is most valuable was he's a poet and he lives in York. And he's like, I don't like using AI. But once you're done, just feel free to come back and talk to me. But he basically spoke to me about automating poetry for a good 2 hours. And I'm like, cool, cool. But that's how you actually see who are gonna be really affected, right? Like one of the things, so because I was working with a US counterpart for like 2 to 3 years, I feel like it was a bubble, right? So like people in the US, everyone feels that it's a ride or die. That if you don't move forward with AI, you're gonna lose the great wave, right? That's how everyone felt. But when you travel outside of the US ecosystem, it's like, oh, actually no. So obviously, Philippines was also very much following that trend of the US ecosystem. But again, Japan, you even feel they're very relaxed with it. Like it's just getting embedded into their day to day. But it's not like front and center. It's not in your face like billboards of AI. London is also like that. That there's a mix of the people in the AI hubs, but there are also people who are like, yeah, we're migrating to the cloud for 2 years now. And it's like, oh, wow, it's not as fast as we assume it to be. So,
Wow. That really gave you a not just a master's actually, that really gave you a global perspective on this entire industry from US to London to all of the culture and the nationalities that you were interacting with, which is so important because some people think that it's just innovation, innovation, innovation. But I think the AI startups that would really have it for the long haul would be the ones that are responsible and ethical because the markets outside the US put ethics, especially the European Union, put ethics, data, and privacy at the center of it. So interesting when we start to even talk about the Philippines.
on the other side, I'm currently also helping out with Data and AI Ethics Philippines. They do a lot of content and they do some Senate hearings when it comes to the new policies in the AI and data privacy space in the country. And it's actually, as I think we've established, the Philippines tends to just copy what is out there. So like EU, it's actually nice that they have a lot of information or interest with sovereignty, which I feel has been the case for like China for the longest time, right? And you've kind of been following that news as well when it comes to like social media is not allowed in China, but they have WeChat. So those kinds of policies are actually shaping how they also communicate to the rest of the world of how do they get their news, how do they get information out there. Now there's that competitive edge of DeepSeek versus OpenAI or the others, plus the European stuff, which is Mistral and all that. But even for generative AI, there's also a lot of shift or demand in EU when it comes to having their own LLMs. Language is definitely a different thing, and they don't want their creative space to be owned by non-Europeans. Or I can't remember. I think it was Switzerland or something that's trying to do a closed unit of like their own language is in the creative space. UK, I think, also has some initiatives when it comes to that. And I feel that's actually something we might want in the Philippines, right? Like the language is dying digitally in terms of people speak in English when we're on online platforms, TikTok, Reddit. We speak English somehow, some way. Why? But the language is kind of dying, and we want to establish our own personality in the space of digital space rather than just us melding and mixing with everyone else, which I am also guilty with, right? Like it's so easy for us to kind of interact with global communities. We're They can basically drop us in any community and we're like, hey, yeah, I can speak your language, right? Obviously it's because it's English, but also because we know their lingo, we know their jokes, we know their humor and all that. But then we're also losing who we are as an identity when it comes to the online space. So that is something I'm interested in seeing how we progress that.
Wow, there's so much in there. Actually, I have a lot of follow-up questions kind of related to those stuff. I'm trying to wrap my head. Hopefully, I can store it here. We'll see. I guess the first one is I really love the fact knowing that you took AI ethics, masters in AI ethics in London in person, not just taking courses, because you see the human side of it, the importance of the human side of it, right? And I know we kind of touched this already, but maybe we can define for our viewers, right? How would you explain AI ethics to our viewers? Just high level, because I know we're going to deep dive on this on our next episode, but just, like layman's terms, like what's AI ethics, really?
Well, I guess it's really knowing what AI is for, who it's for, and what it's about. I think so. I can't even remember it, but Asimov had three rules when it comes to AI or robotics, right? Like, it can't do any harm to humanity, and it should follow what the person says. So that's very important, right? And I feel like that's the basic rule of building solutions and AI is it's meant to be done for the world and for the people, not for the buck, right? So
Love that. Love that. I mean, it's humanity, right? That's why I think you wanted to be there because you wanted to be human. You want to experience the human side of it. I know a lot of people doesn't know AI ethics as the human side of it, right? Sometimes people think that oh, it's regulations, it's compliance, it's governance, but really it's for technology to serve people and not the other way around. Second is you mentioned in your masters that you're the only Asian in the group, right? You touch a little bit about, that we're kind of losing our identity, maybe as Filipinos, for example. Why do you think representation is important in an AI world?
um so it's definitely a lot of it is the technical aspect of it is when you look at healthcare data and you're not represented, then you're not gonna get the diagnosis that's right for you. In a way, like I don't know the numbers, but that is gonna be a situation if actually, that already happened with women, right? Like most of the studies before for healthcare were done by male doctors. So a lot of the information for the anatomy of women was not caught early, mostly because of that. But it's not just gender that's different with humanity. It's also like our race and our identity, right? Like we always want to say that we're just humans. We shouldn't be divided by race. But I feel like anatomy wise, there are certain differences, right? Like I think melanin is one thing when it comes to how are we protected from the sun, or height is another thing that is probably because of X, Y, and Z. I mean, I'm not someone who knows those things, but we do know that there are certain things like our noses being flatter is, I think there's also a reason for it because of the geography as well. Like evolution definitely plays a part, right? And that's the technical side. But also when it comes to the linguistics side, we also want representation of one of the things we're curious about is mental health. Putting up guardrails for mental health, right? So OpenAI would say that they're gonna build up guardrails when people start chatting with it, to determine if that person may have mental health. But if their only information is based on the Western culture, if someone from the Philippines starts communicating with OpenAI, there's definitely going to be a difference of like they don't want to say it out loud versus someone who would just straight out say, I am depressed. A Filipino might go around in circles. And I don't know how OpenAI is going to do that, right? Unless, I mean, before it even establishes an understanding of Filipinos overall.
That's right. That's why I think representation is really important. It's all about data too, right? If your data, you get the data only on specific cohort of people or maybe a specific segment and you're losing the other segment, but the entire world is using it, then you'll see that there's going to be gaps or issues in there. You also mentioned about the comparison between the US and the EU, about and how this thing is moving, right? In the US, you're right, it's like a race right now, not just for businesses, but also for the country itself. But it's a good realization that when you go to Europe and other countries, that it's not like that. well, if they compare US and Europe, they always say that Europe has a better quality of life. Maybe that's why the Europe has more focus on, AI ethics, AI safety right now.
Yeah, I think to add to that, I think Australia even just announced that they're blocking social media for anyone under 16. So it's
Yep.
definitely everyone's pushing for it now. And
Right.
for the UK, we even have an option of paying for our Instagram accounts. So I don't get ads. So like if you pay, you don't get ads. So now it's opt in by if I'm not paying for your services, sure I'll still get ads. But it's because of a law that was passed also in UK.
Yeah. And I think Denmark is also looking at, some related laws around social media because recently just Australia just, passed this or enacted this law that below 16, I think, that you cannot use social media anymore. It's really good to see people, especially like you, taking this kind of different path, right? That a lot of people have been building right now, but you're taking this AI ethics path, and I think we need a lot of people like you to balance things out. Yeah, because I think right now a lot of companies they treat ethics as an overhead, right? Rather than part of the building process. Right? It's not required. It's not mandatory. If you look at investment, why would I invest in AI ethics along with my development, right? If I need more stuff to get done, the innovation. So, but I think there will be a point where this two things needs to be in parallel, right? As you build, you have to look at ethics.
Just a concrete example when you mentioned, Carol, OpenAI, for example. OpenAI has been more aggressive, maybe question on the guardrails, on the safety sometimes, but they're definitely saying sorry later rather than putting it out there. They just want to ship it out fast, for sure, right? Then it has made them the market leader. But now with Anthropic, Claude Opus has been astonishing. Like Opus, I would say for all the LLMs, I'd put Opus as number one. And then the new Gemini as number two. And then suddenly the output of ChatGPT is like, what's happening, right? What's happening with the output of ChatGPT? It's suddenly, in terms of output and comparing all of these LLMs, I'd put Claude Opus as of this moment, as of today, guys, because it's been moving really fast as number one. And I suddenly kind of felt a distrust with companies that didn't put AI and ethics and responsibility at the center because I'm wondering where are all my personal conversations going? Like when I ask it about my medical my medical records or my medical data or if I have like a mental health question, who has and who is handling that data? So I wanted to ask like how do you think distrust and ethics would work together to be a unique selling proposition to these platforms as your unfair advantage if you actually have AI and ethics at the center of it?
I mean, honestly, I don't think a lot of people are thinking about it. Hate to say it, but I feel as a marketing push, it's again the unsexy side of it, right? And I feel the mass majority would not even really think about where their information is going. Honestly, I think for LLMs, I don't think they're using it for much more in terms of selling your healthcare data. They are not gonna go that deep. They're probably using it more for conversations. How do I speak to you? But the more intense thing that's going on is it tries to know your patterns in language and how it would respond to you. So you will speak to it more. So their feedback loop is more about how do you get invested into it, which I think is that's what's going on with OpenAI, right? And that's why I'm also curious. Like, why are you more interested, or why do you like Claude more? Because honestly, for me, I also like Claude more, but because I hate how OpenAI says yes to everything I say, and Claude actually he tells me you're wrong, and I'm like, I love this. So I feel that's also a personality
Yeah.
difference for me.
ChatGPT wants to be more pleasing and agreeable, whereas Claude wants to kind of steer you in an ethical or correct route or to be objective in a sense. Less good for creativity where you want to go wild with an idea, because ChatGPT can definitely go wild with an idea, but Claude is definitely will stay within the steering or the constraints that you give it. And it has constraints pre-built in my opinion, based on the output that it has given me. So from a creative writing standpoint, I'd rely on ChatGPT probably more. But from if I was doing something for courses or academics, I'd rely on Opus, Claude, Anthropic more. That's where I'm at.
It's been a race as well for big tech companies right now, right? OpenAI, Google, Gemini, Claude. But I was just thinking, reflecting on it. OpenAI started as a nonprofit as well, who's supposed to be looking at people, right? And remember the story there was, I think it was Elon Musk and Sam Altman, right? I mean, our audience can look it up. There's more accurate information out there. But I guess the bottom line is th- it's these companies are changing. They have been evolving, and it really depends on what's the business driver would be, what their values would be. Tesla recently changed their goals as well, from just EV to more the robotic side of it, right? From sustainability, and self-driving cars, and now the robotics part of AI. So, and I feel like, you know, at the end of the day, it's going to be the battle of trust, because I don't think people will trust AI system until they see the real, that the real effort that's being done, that they're really taking genuine measures to keep their systems, the applications that we are using safe. But I guess the irony there is like what you said, is people really thinking on how their data is being used?
I think one thing benefit of the doubt with Sam Altman and OpenAI, because I feel I had that same thought as well of like it's harmless, right? Like it use AI to do your work for you. And when they released OpenAI 5, ChatGPT 5 point something, people started getting mad that their AIs were acting different. And Sam Altman, I think, tweeted about relax, like, okay, we're gonna give it back. But I feel that it's really hard, right? It's hard to visualize what is it that people would use your platform for. I don't think, well, I hope not. They didn't intend on that level of enthusiasm when it comes to building actual relationships. But what I am not okay with is how they're now capitalizing on when they saw that that's how people are using it. They're like, okay, maybe we should monetize this entire framework now, right? Like they already saw that it was happening. Instead of doing something to make people less addicted to it, they just capitalized on it more. Sometimes I just think they're a bunch of nerds who didn't really think about the 100 possibilities, thousands of possibilities, which is fair. 5 people can't comprehend the possibilities that it can offer.
Great point, Carol. Great point, G. What popped in my head during that conversation was actually probably in the next 5 years, there would be a division between fast food AI and gourmet AI. Whereas the mass market wouldn't really mind what they're putting in their body, whereas the mass market wouldn't really mind what they're doing with data. So there would be fast food AI that's, good for all. But at the same time, there would be fine dining AI that would be,
Organic
yeah,
vendors,
organic, fine dining, grain free, dairy free, everything free, non
non-GMO.
GMO AI that people would look for because that higher value, that more educated consumer, a more educated consumer, a higher value consumer, an enterprise grade client would definitely put AI ethics, privacy, data, and all of that at the center. Because you're responsible. If you're a Fortune 500 company, you're thinking about that, right? Where's my data going? But if you are like an intern in the island somewhere, I don't know, just trying to do an essay, then you really won't care. I just need something to do my essay right now. Who cares if it's accurate? Who cares if it's hallucinating at this point? But what I'm getting from you guys is that it seems like with all of this war between OpenAI, Anthropic, and even Grok, with even Grok, that it seems that there would be segmentation in the market probably in the next 5 years. That there would be fast food AI serving the mass market who doesn't really care, And at the same time, there would be gourmet, fine dining, Michelin star AI that would serve a market that's more educated, that's more concerned about where their data is going, how it's being processed, how it's being used, and how their words alone is being used in order to get them more hooked in the platform. So that's where I'm getting at. So our next segment here would be more on AI careers. Where are you seeing tech going? Where are you seeing career paths going? Like the non-traditional tech career paths. What are you seeing?
Definitely complicated right now. So so I think there is that problem of the bottom layer getting redundated, right? I think that's the biggest problem we have is no one wants to no one wants the headache of an intern anymore. So starting out, people need to be very, deep in their learning during their undergrads. As soon as they get to the workforce, they need to have a certain level of skills. I think what's gonna happen is AI is gonna be we shouldn't have zero junior engineers, right? Or zero junior analysts. But they will need to be like 50% better than how they were before because then they're going to be working with AI. The skill sets are going to be different, how they communicate or how they build reports. It's going to be more about validation now rather than actually writing. Writing skills is probably not going to be very important anymore at this stage because companies want the same formats anyway. So it's not like we can do creativity with the way we write reports anyway. Um, so yeah, it already is an interesting world when it comes to getting rid of the bottom tier workforce.
Great point. That's really painful, Carol. That's so true. No one wants the headache of an intern. Like, mic drop. At the same time, Carol, when you said that, I was like thinking, I also don't want the headache of a bad middle manager. Like, who wants a middle manager that doesn't want to change anymore, right? Just an example. I asked the person to do a certain a document. I asked the person to create a document. I wanted to delegate this off of my plate. And I asked the person, and I was like, okay, I'd give this person a week to do it. And then I found out that this person delegated or wanted to delegate the task that I delegated them to do it, to have somebody else do it. I was like, this is a 5-minute AI task that I already gave you a week for, and you want to delegate it out of your hands? Like, what? So, what I did was during the meeting, I literally finished the entire document when I found out that he was trying to delegate this off of their plate. I found myself getting impatient with a senior person who couldn't seem to do a task that was I thought that could easily be done in a week. But then I was able to do it in like 10 minutes. So that's the scary part, right? Of the future of careers. Like we're losing patience for the intern that constantly needs to be trained. But at the same time, it's very challenging to hire somebody who is quadruple the price of an intern, or maybe 5 times or 10 times the price of an intern, but doesn't know how to do the work that's half or 25 or 75% less time than it originally took with better quality. And I think that's the new demand now. That how do you do your work with 50% less time but with 2x more quality or 5x more quality, right? So my question here is, what skills or mindset do you think would matter the most as we enter that weird shift that I'm a senior person, but now I have to figure out how to do this in 5 minutes? But at the same time, you kind of have to, because otherwise, I'd rather get a fresh grad, train them with all of these AI skills, have them figure this out, and give them all of the tools than, why hire somebody expensive who doesn't want to change?
I think there's a lot of things into that, right? Like I think we mentioned a while ago that it really comes down to passion and interest. And I do think that is still gonna be the core of how we live the rest of our lives with AI is if you really like it, then you should still be doing it regardless, right? But if you're just doing it because it pays the bills, which unfortunately is how much probably a lot of people are, right? Like they're probably doing, obviously they're working because they need the cash. But if you actually find what you like, then you won't need or you wouldn't want AI to do it for you anyway, right? Or you'd still have that initiative to upskill, learn, continue reading, and all that. I don't even think AI has anything to do with that, that people would just do their stuff without even thinking about how do they actually do it.
If I was the intern that needs a job right now, what would you tell me?
I have an answer for that.
If I was the intern looking for a job right now in this market that's so hard, Carol, how would you help me?
Because yeah, I think that I mean, again, if you really like what you're doing, you'll find a way to do something about it, like get volunteer in a role or meet the right people, go to events, especially with in a community like London. I know if it's in Manila, it's probably harder to like network the right way. Finding people who is in tune or finding people who are relevant to what you want to do, right? That's easier said than done, but I think now it's actually much easier when you go on Spotify. You might find the right podcaster. If you go on YouTube, you might find someone who's relevant to where you want to go. And then you find other people. I think one of the things that actually got me to my university was I wanted the ethics side of it. And when I looked at LinkedIn, there were a few people who graduated the AI ethics course. And I'm like, oh, okay. So there's actually a school that does it. So it's like just having that initiative to find what you want and going towards it. And again, I know it's easier said than done. And some people might need to do X number of things that they don't really like before they find it. But and sometimes, the bills need to be paid. You have to do what you don't like,
Yeah.
all those things.
You mentioned something really, really good, which is to look for projects that to volunteer work, which is so big because in my career, I've never actually stopped interning. Meaning, after 15 years in tech, I never stopped interning. That if there's something that's interesting there that I want to be a part of, I don't care if what the contract is at the start, but I more like I want to be part of this. And I think that is an aggressive tactic that a lot of interns can also use and do. Like, do volunteer work that propels you to the next opportunity. And this volunteer work can be part of your portfolio, right? Same way for that middle manager, which is my next question to you. If I was a middle manager spending 20 years in the same job managing an Excel sheet right now, Carol, how do I have a future job in this age of AI? How do I
So
complement my skills, Carol, that I've been doing for 20 years? How does a middle manager who's been doing the same boring work for 20 years suddenly find their footing in the age of AI?
So that's definitely the hard part, right? Like complacency is definitely one of the things that we might not want to be anymore in the next 20 years. That obviously worked in the last 30 years, 40 years. Staying in the same job, doing the same thing for 40 years of your life. That was the norm before. I think when we were starting out our careers, that a lot of people were mad at our generation for jumping a lot and exploring way too much. But now that we're seeing the shift 15, 20 years later, that's now the requirement of like, you can't sit at the same job description for 20, 30 years because you don't even know if that job will exist in 2 years. So it's like, but then again, if you're willing to risk because you actually enjoy doing it, because like let's say we talk about if you're a photographer, right? If you really enjoy photography, you're doing the same thing every day, but every 2 weeks there's a new camera that comes out, then you still understand the new technology that the new tools are releasing, that you're still growing, right? You're growing your business, you're growing your tools, but at the end of the day, you've still been a photographer for 20, 30 years. But if you were a photographer for 20 years and you're still using the same camera, 2 years later your camera breaks, you go on whatever OLX to look for the same model and same brand, then you might have a problem, right? Then in 30 years, you might be called the vintage photographer. Might be a new niche, but it's definitely how it's gonna go. It
Yeah. So if you plan to spend 20 years of your life doing one thing, you better make sure that you're the Michelin star of that role and not the fast food cook
yeah.
who's stuck in a certain role. Like, not to put shade on a fast food cook, right? But you get the point to whoever's listening here. But one key takeaway I got, sure, Carol.
Yeah, I guess if you're also a fast food cook, if you really like it, then you should learn how to operate the robotic hands
Yeah,
at some point.
because probably management and HQ is going to be implementing the robotic hands at some point to make it a marketing play for your restaurant.
Talking about the future of careers, maybe it's an opportunity for viewers to look at AI ethics, responsible AI, because this is going to be another career path, right? I remember which we called this in one of our previous episodes when we were just starting the rise with AI, right? When we think that AI ethicists, for example, AI governance professionals, this is one of the roles that will thrive, right? And maybe not yet at this point, but I truly believe that slowly it's going to be a big thing because AI is not just going to disrupt healthcare, where it's highly regulated industry. It's not just finance, where it's also highly regulated, but everything, all industries, all aspects of life, in general that we're using, I think it's going to be impacted by AI. That's why ethics and responsible AI is going to be important. And I think it's going to be a role in the future. And actually, doing this podcast, I was doing some research. I saw that according to the economic research by Indeed, job postings related to responsible AI have been growing, right? And also, big tech companies like Google, Meta, all other tech companies, the postings that requires responsible AI skills or knowledge have been growing. I think right now they've been hiring a lot of developers with responsible AI background, and I think that's going to be the future that a lot of people could look into.
Wow. I mean, right now, just with the startup that we're working with, we're finding that in certain markets, ethical and safe AI is like the number one priority of buyers because they're concerned, especially when it comes to mental health, especially when you're talking about anything for education. The buyers are more educated, so educated, but the buyers are more educated, so they're more concerned. Like, what are you doing with their data? So it is like a really critical and pivotal role for folks moving forward. So offhand, guys, I'm thank you so much, Carol. This has been the best hour to listen, to talk, to just have fun with this conversation. I really hope that we make AI ethics really a sexy pillar for that CEO who's aggressive and just wants to grow their startups, but not really seeing that the long game for AI startups is actually to build it ethically, responsibly, and safe. Thank you so much. I'm excited for the next episode, even because we're going to deep dive on AI ethics, responsible AI, and so on. So thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Carol. Thanks, G.
Thank you. Bye.